Hey folks, Pat here from DNS. This Madison area fishing report is current as of August 11th. Just a quick thing here. Last week I mentioned friend of the shop, Rick Krueger, had an article in Madison Magazine coming out. That article is up on their website. I'm going to try to remember to put a link below the report here. A really fascinating article. Great job. Rick, of course, very knowledgeable about all things when it comes to the lakes, but particularly diving. And it's a great snapshot of the history. Features a bunch of Rick and some other divers and some cool pictures of things they found over the years, and a really great snapshot of the history of the lakes. So if you're interested, give it a look. It really is a great article, and great job, Rick. And thanks again for all you do for anglers around town. Um, I guess a little bit of shop news. I made a post about this a week ago or something. Digital stream thermometers. These are just food service thermometers that work great, and they're cheaper than buying a fancy name brand one. But we got some here at the shop. I was out this weekend with my son. Was it Sunday? It was warm. Our first stop, the water read 67.4 degrees at noon, so we moved on. We found a tributary nearby that had some nice cold water, and got into some great action on some hoppers. And speaking of hoppers and terrestrials in general, it's definitely that time of year on the trout fishing side of things. We're fully stocked with a bunch of hoppers and terrestrials here. You know, these ants and beetles will work still, but really it's full on hopper season now. I guess I'm calling it officially hopper season because, there's a lot of them around and fish are looking up. But also, speaking of looking up, bass are looking up right now, and the topwater frog bite has also been very hot around town. So got a bunch of frogs up here on the shelves. Stop in and get stocked up because that's a super fun way to catch bass. Um, Otherwise, I guess as far as the report goes, we had another dry week here in Madison, but with temps in the low 80s, it was a really nice week to get out and do some fishing. I got a little rain this morning, but it looks like another gorgeous weekend ahead. And the week ahead next week looks great too. So get out there and enjoy it while it lasts. Um, on the Mendota buoy, actually, I got it up here. Has been down since yesterday, so it's not reading anything. So I don't really have a accurate stream temp or water temp for you, but um, earlier this week the temps were around 78 degrees, so I assume that's pretty much where we're at today, which would put Monona and Wabisa a couple degrees warmer respectively. Do make sure you're watching those temps for muskies as well. Anything over 80 degrees, you're going to want to give those fish a break until things cool down. Generally, this time of year is when the fishing reports here are going to really start to sound very similar from week to week. We just sort of hit that summer cruise control pattern here, probably until mid-September. So sounds like floating weeds are causing problems depending on wind and where you're at. But I hear water clarity remains pretty good around the chain. That's also reflected here on the beach water quality site for Dane County Public Health. All the beaches look like they're open and good water quality there. So that's a good sign as far as fishing goes. Um, this time of year, the bluegills have pretty much moved out to either on weed lines or they're suspended over deep water. Many places with redworms and spikes working well for those fish. Perch action remains spotty on Mendota and elsewhere. Largemouth bass are being found shallow around the chain, and smallmouth bass and walleye are being picked up in good numbers on shoreline breaks and mid-lake humps, with crawlers and fathead minnows working well for those fish. Pike are plentiful, and it's been too warm to safely fish for muskies for the most part. Area streams are running low, and all the local rivers are very low right now. Up here on the north side, up to Cherokee, still a weedy mess per usual, but you can still, I've been hearing about some decent topwater action up there. You can find some pockets, run some frogs over that. The school road launch can get you in out here at the channel, and then you can work your way up and down through here and fish the weed lines. There's been some good bass action up there, and it's nice to get away from a lot of the pleasure boaters because it's nice and quiet back there. Catfish action down to the 113 bridge has been continued good. Folks are using crawlers and stink bait for most of those fish. And, it's a nice mixed bag of fish. I heard about some perch coming out of there earlier this week, a bonus walleye here and there. So you never really know what you'll get. As far as Lake Mendota goes, like I mentioned, a lot of bluegills are out on the weed lines. Look for those fish in 15-ish feet of water, maybe a little deeper. The perch have been hard to find on the weeds out there. A lot of small fish around, but the good news is that the gills have kind of filled in that role and are keeping people busy. I've heard about some good reports of some of those dinner plate jumbo gills that folks, that Mendota is famous for. But the good news is a lot of folks are letting those fish go to preserve the fishery and just keeping the nicer fish, which is obviously totally fine. Um, as far as walleye and smallmouth bass, they're mostly on near shore breaks, kind of near weed lines, but for fish more in the deeper water, I'd look for 20-ish feet of water, maybe out to 25 or even deeper. Mid-lake humps are also producing a lot of those fish. Largemouth bass bite up shallow remains good around town. I've been hearing some good action along the university shoreline. Also up to Tenney Park, some good reports in the evenings about some walleye coming in there dusk and into dark, and some good reports below the Tenney Lock Dam and down the Yahara River. They've been still pumping water through there pretty good, opened up the locks a little bit, and so that brings more fish into the system, and they are catching good bluegills, some good walleye, bass, occasional muskie down there. The Tenney Park lagoons also continue to produce some nice largemouth bass, and of course a lot of tiny bluegills if you're looking to keep a kid busy. Floating weeds and filamentous algae continue to be a problem depending on where you are on Lake Monona. Some gills are still being found on weed lines, but for the most part, those fish are being found suspended over deep water, 15 to 20 feet down. Gills, bass, and pike are being caught over here in Monona Bay and the triangles. Good gill numbers are still coming out of the Monona Terrace over here, and decent crappie bite still exists out there, close to dark. Wingra, ton of tiny bluegills, some good largemouth, decent pike. Geez, now I'm all screwed up here. Some decent muskie action over there, and I haven't heard a lot personally about muskie on Lake Monona, but the Capital City Inc. chapter Capital City Muskies Inc. chapter in their August newsletter said that their catch and release rates are at about where they are for a normal year. So folks are getting some good muskies out here on both Monona and Wabisa, and down on Wabisa. Upper Mud continues to be pretty weedy, but they are still getting some good fish on topwater. And you can fish the channel out here. The weed edges always are a pretty safe bet for producing fish. Same thing as on Wabisa as on Monona. Pretty much, weeds can be a problem depending on where you're at and what the wind's doing. Few gills on weed lines, but for the most part, those fish are suspended out over deeper water. Look for them about 20 feet down, 15, 20 feet down. Good walleye action over here to Babcock and Bible Camp areas. I haven't heard much specifically out of Wabisa in the way of muskies, but they obviously the local club is doing well, so they're getting some fish out of there too, I'm sure. Down on Kegonza, weeds down there continue to be a problem depending on which way the wind blows. I heard Fish Camp County Park the other day, the wind was blowing in there and you couldn't even hardly launch a boat. The weeds were pushing up in there so thick. The floating weeds, that is. Otherwise, they are still getting some good gills on weed lines, but most of the fish are suspended out over deeper water. Look for those fish again, 15 to 20 feet down. The walleye action on Kegonza has been spotty from what I've heard. Over on Lake Koshkonong, there's been not a lot that I've heard personally. The internet says that things have also been a little tough over there. Trolling crawler harnesses and flicker shads, mostly up here on this northeast end of the lake. Tends to be a pretty safe bet this time of year, though. Otherwise, on the Rock River itself, all the way from the Indian Ford Dam down here up to Jefferson, I've been hearing about a nice mixed bag of fish. Some flathead catfish showing up here and there. Up to Beaver Dam, channel catfish bite. The eater-sized ones up there is still going on if you can avoid the weeds, it sounds like. I've heard good yellow bass bite over here still on Crystal Lake, and good crappie bite after dark. Devil's Lake trout continue to be good out there and willing to bite, but they are being found a little bit deeper in like 30 feet of water from what I've heard. Otherwise, the river is, it's super low right now. I was out there a couple times this week. I looked in some spots. It looked like there was more sand than water, and that sounds troublesome, but it actually, from a fishing perspective, will stack the fish up in deeper holes up and down the river. So look for corners, downstream sides of sandbars, anywhere that you can find some current. Shoreline structure is also good. The frog bite has been great for smallmouth if you're fishing near shore, but also they're busting large schools of shad swimming around out there. So if you see some smallmouth busting those shad on the surface, just toss a lure in there, pretty much anything, and hold on to your rod, because it's a fun way to target those fish. Otherwise, all the dams up and down the river, Prairie du Sac, Castle Rock, the Dells, Pedenwell, all of them are producing a nice mixed bag of fish. Haven't heard a lot specifically out of Lake Wisconsin, although I did hear, of folks getting a nice mixed bag of fish, anywhere from walleye, plenty of sheep's head, panfish, and even the occasional catfish coming out of there. Haven't heard a lot out of Portage to the Dells, but that, of course, is a great stretch for smallmouth in there. And up to the Castle Rock dams, like I said, nice mixed bag at Castle Rock and Petenwell dams. Out on the lakes themselves, it sounds like it's been a little green up there lately, but folks are getting fish on current or steep breaks, and even up as shallow as 10 feet of water. But also plenty of white bass up there, and some catfish coming out of there too. So those lakes are always a nice mixed bag of fish. Over on the Mississippi River, it sounds like bluegill and perch are being caught on weed lines, some walleye and smallmouth bass on wing dams, and crappies being found on shoreline structure. Over to Milwaukee, kind of the same deal over there as far as the rivers go. The tributaries over there all running really low. The Milwaukee River, good smallmouth bite over there, and then that's again concentrating fish in some of the deeper pockets, and lots of good public access out there. So if you're in the Milwaukee area, lots of public parks and some great smallmouth fishing. As far as the big lake goes, the charters are of course catching kings and cohos, but soon those fish are going to start moving into the harbors here. Starting about mid-August, they'll start showing up here. So any day now, really, and that'll be the same all the way up and down the coast. I did hear up to Port Washington a decent coho bite up there, or cohos or kings, I can't remember off the break wall. So those fish are starting to move in up there, and they're getting ready for their fall run, and that's it's exciting to see. So soon they'll be moving up in the tribs, and then it's game on for those fish. I did hear about some decent a perch bite up here to Lake Winnebago. If you feel like taking a trip there, it sounds like they are getting some good perch. Otherwise, down here on the Madison chain, or in the Madison area for trout, like I mentioned, my son and I were out. We had a great time fishing hoppers. Just make sure you're checking those stream temps. Otherwise, locally, streams are running low and clear. Wild parsnip is starting to die off, but it's still very prevalent in a lot of areas and making it tough to access streams. Between that and the parsnip, or the nettles, fishing can be challenging. Sporadic catches of mayflies and caddisflies are coming off mostly in the early mornings and evenings. But like I've mentioned many times, we are full on into terrestrial season now. So any terrestrials, ants, beetles, crickets are going to work, but hoppers are probably your best bet for topwater if bugs aren't coming off. Otherwise, of course, woolly buggers and nymphs can be effective anytime fish aren't looking up. On the spinning gear side of things, panther martins, tube jigs, and rapalas are fantastic options. And on the live bait side it's hard to beat a redworm underneath a bobber, run through a little run or a pool. I guess that pretty much does it for the report. I guess if you want me to expand on anything, feel free to call the shop, 241-4225, and we're happy to try to point you in the right direction. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Post your comments and pictures, catches below. And thanks for tuning in. Good luck out there, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much.